And welcome to another edition of the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Kevin Mooney here with you alongside Jason Hamo. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I am wonderful. Yourself?
I'm doing fantastic.
And Chris Douglas with us as well. Hey, Chris.
Kevin, how's it going?
Hey, so it's a lovely Monday evening at this time. How is your Monday evening, sir?
It's not bad. I think it was we had some snow flurries earlier, so let's knock that off already, huh?
Yeah, enough with that. Enough with that. So it's spring this week. Spring starts
to be
tomorrow.
That. Man. So joining us now on the Throwing Bagels podcast is a fellow Oswego grad, class of 1983. He's the South Region College Sports Editor of the USA Today Network, he's based at in Knoxville, Tennessee, with the News Sentinel there. Also teaches sports journalism at the University of Tennessee. It is Phil Kaplan. Phil, thank you so much for being with us.
It's great to be here and to talk Oswego and sports. And I had to think throwing bagels. Just taking a guess. It's like bagels strikeouts or throwing. Tell me what the origination is.
Sure. So for a time, I think in the 90s,
yes,
when Oswego and Plattsburgh would play each other for men's hockey, when Oswego would score the first goal against Plattsburgh in Oswego, they would throw bagels onto the ice like bird food. So there you go. And then once Oswego was assessed a penalty and lost the game because they were throwing bagels, they said maybe we shouldn't do this anymore, and that was it.
Good one.
It didn't last very long.
Right. So it is a bit obscure, right? It plays mostly to grads, maybe in the mid 90s to the early aughts, but hey, that's our name, right? We're throwing bagels. So that's what we do. But don't do it when you're at the rink. That's all. That's all we ask.
Especially now they'll like throw you out.
Yeah, they will.
In Nashville, they throw a catfish onto the rink.
Catfish. Oh.
But you have to get the catfish in your pants to get in the court. You can't just so they sneak it in their trousers, which you can just imagine, and then throw it on the ice.
I hope it's dead when they bring it in.
I would hope, because that would give it away if it was alive and someone would be moving in your pants.
That would be a little uncomfortable and it would look a little weird. I'm not
Yes.
Those get pretty big.
What is that in your pants? Is that a catfish?
Right. There's a catfish in your pants, yes.
Let's flip it around in there. Why is that moving so much?
Yes.
Well, and because I work now at Cornell and Harvard, they played Harvard in the first round of the conference playoffs. And Harvard and Cornell have this tradition where if Cornell scores against Harvard in Ithaca, in Cornell, they'll throw fish onto the ice. So they were saying, do not bring any fish. Absolutely no fish on the ice. And I think it went off without a hitch. So Cornell actually wound up sweeping Harvard. So they're on to the next round and they were fish free. So there you go. So all kinds of stuff, right?
Does sushi count? Do they throw sushi on the ice?
There's a lot of fish traditions going on here.
Yeah.
And then what? Detroit had the octopus. Is that Detroit?
Well, I think that's a homage to what the Predators do in Nashville. Was to they came up with something, and because they're in the South and catfish.
Yeah, that's very true. And so let's talk about sports and Tennessee sports. Mm-hmm. Selection Sunday, as we speak. Selection Sunday was yesterday. Mm-hmm. The Tennessee men have the 2 seed. Will take on St. Peter's in the Midwest Regional. The UT women have the 6 seed, and they'll play Green Bay in the Portland 4 bracket. Is Phil, is the university and the city of Knoxville raring to go here for some March Madness?
Well, everything was looking good for a number 1 seed for Tennessee until they hit Mississippi State in the quarterfinals on Friday. It was a terrible performance, and getting knocked out that early hurt them because with North Carolina losing, I think they could have easily made a case for that number 1 if they would have won and played Alabama or Kentucky or somebody in the other half. Of course, it was Florida too, so it was a weakened SEC tournament. I think it happened in a lot of places, and there's been a lot of does it really have to? Things depend upon the tournament to where you are seated, because you do all this body of work and then you play for 5, it's a 3-4 day thing, and there's your season. So, of course, if Greg Sankey wants to do it, he wants to get rid of all the automatic qualifiers from the mid majors and the small conferences and just make it a big event for the Power Five team. So we'll see. But yeah, Tennessee fans are excited, because this was something for until relatively for 6, 7, 8 years. There was a long stretch where Tennessee didn't make the tournament, or we didn't even have to worry about watching the selection show because they were, it was more like, are they going to make the NIT kind of thing? But it's amazing. Bruce Pearl kind of transformed Tennessee basketball. And of course, he got in trouble for cheating, which in today's world, it's like, yeah, you can do that. Have a barbecue at the house and invite the recruits. But at the time, it was bad. It kind of hurt the program. But Rick Barnes, who got fired by Texas, gets the job right away and has recruited some really outstanding players, some that were one and done, which usually never happen at Tennessee. And he's been just keeping it going. And it's all about defense. And I don't know if you guys have seen or heard about Dalton Connect, the transfer from Northern Colorado that probably is going to be a first-round draft pick. It might be the player of the year. The guy is just an outstanding shooter. He can drive to the basket. He came to Tennessee because he wanted to learn how to play defense because that was the only thing they told him it was really missing. But he's taken everyone by surprise. I mean, we didn't think he would be like the way it's turned out. So we'll see on Thursday. That should be a win. St. Peter's had the magical run a couple of years ago. I don't think I doubt it'll continue, but and then we've got a potential Texas-Tennessee match, which will be great because that's the school that fired Rick Barnes.
Yeah, you got to watch out for those peacocks, though.
It's 2 years ago, everybody had to watch out. Nobody
exactly
the run. Yeah. So we'll see. There's, I think, one main player left from that team. The interesting storyline is Zakai Ziegler, a point guard from New York City, who's his brother, or I think it's his half brother, is on St. Peter's. So great. We already recognized that and wrote that the other last night.
You had mentioned Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner. He's been a very strong advocate for expanding the basketball tournament, mostly so that Power Five conference teams can make it in. How much momentum is behind the idea of expanding the tournament beyond the 68 teams?
I think there's a lot. It's about money, and money usually wins. The women's tournament they've created this WBIT. I don't know if anyone was paying attention, but after they did the 68, then they created a 32 team field run by the NCAA, and they did not have they seeded the teams 1 through 32 based on need. And even the NIT has changed, right? It used to be automatic qualifier, and they said, no, we're going to take what's left over from the Power Five that don't make it, and we're going to place them in. And then what happened? Ole Miss, Memphis, a bunch of other teams decided we don't want to play in this thing. It's a waste of our time, and nobody cares about it. But I think eventually, just like football is going to expand the playoff from 4 teams, right? And even get bigger. And look, the way they look at it, they gave the players the ability to make money. So if you're going to make money, then you're going to work for us. And, so if you have to play more games, so be it. So I think we're just going down. College sports, look, I'm a little bit older than you guys. My dad would just say, it's never like it was like in the 50s, right? And for me, it's like, it's not like it was in the 70s or 80s anymore. So it's changed.
We've discussed this pretty recently as actually, this talk of going to 96 teams or whatever. It's just, to me, it seems absolutely insane to go that high. You're basically saying, oh, you have a 500 record. Sure. You can play in the NCAA tournament. Like it used to be, if you had a conference record of a 500, you probably wouldn't even get an at-large bid, even if you had a decent winning record in the, during the season.
Yeah, I think it's just about money. So each team will be guaranteed money if if they can play in these things. As that's how if you look at the rules with the WBIT, players, the teams get money, they get a per diem. There's just built in, and it's again to help the colleges, and then of course they're showcased on ESPN, not just on CBS Sports Network, where you can't find it. So there's always, part of all these deals, there's money, and that's probably why the NCAA is going to be pushed out. And I don't know if you guys were following, and because it was a big story in our area, Tennessee took on the NCAA, right? And about NIL, and went to court, and Tennessee basically won, and it's suspended NIL rules, and all because the NCAA wanted to go back and get a kid who was in high school who got a flight from California on a donor's plane to come to Tennessee, and that's what they were worried about. I mean, it was like, why are you picking a fight over that? Tennessee hired a high-profile law firm, fought it. They got the attorney generals involved, and they won. And it's just another sign about how the NCAA is probably going to be, maybe in 5 years they're gone, and it's all run by conferences, and they create their own governing body.
Do you think there might be a time when the Power Five conferences just decide to say, heck with it, we're gonna start our own postseason tournament?
Right. Well, that's what in football, that's what SEC and the Big Ten are trying to do. So yeah, it's got all the plans for it, and that's why everyone's jumping conferences to get a spot in, so they can at least get a share of the money and be in a spot where at least they're people are going to be in the picture. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind, and it's going to be the haves and the have-nots. There's going to be the schools like Texas and Ohio State, and even Tennessee or Alabama in football, even with Saban gone. All these, they're the ones that are going to do well. It's going to be tough for like the Kent States and St. Peter's, or SUNY Binghamton. They don't call them SUNY anymore. Binghamton and things like that. Stetson. It's just really tough for those teams. Well, you saw what happened. I think, what was it? Loyola Marymount dropped like 6 sports because, one, they don't have a football team, so there's not a lot of revenue coming in. And then this whole NIL, trying to manage that with athletes, it takes you have to hire people to see what's going on, where all the money's coming from. So collegiate sports is basically, if it wasn't a business before, and now we got EA Sports ready to cash into.
Yes, of course. Can't wait till that come out.
Exactly. The video games have to cash in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, I was we're actually doing a story on that because they're doing the soundtrack in Nashville. So we've been invited to cover that, and they're going to have all the music that they're going to use for that, and then they're going into a studio in Nashville.
Awesome.
How have you seen the women's game develop over the past 5-10 years? Like, what is it? Where is it now versus where it was then, and where do you think it's going?
Well, I've been, kind of lucky when I got here in '96, and I honestly couldn't tell you a lot about women's basketball, but when I came to Knoxville because of Tennessee and Pat Summitt, they made the front page, and I'm sure and we traveled to every game. And it's changed. I mean, you can just look at what's happened because of Caitlin Clark, right? National coverage, being part of the nightly news, and ESPN having a reporter that's going to follow her throughout the tournament. And look, there's an audience, right? It's just that the audience was never given the opportunity to see these things, and it's the same thing with women's soccer. The professional league, people probably said that'll never work, but now they put it on television and they started, adding teams, and now it's like this, you would probably be lucky if you had a franchise in that league.
Yeah.
But women's basketball is always been huge. The Women's Basketball Hall of Fame is actually in Knoxville, and they have an induction ceremony every year. I've been lucky to go to it a few times. But Pat Summitt, was part of that, with Gino Auriemma at UConn, and we cover probably the biggest name in women's basketball as far as Coach Dawn Staley. And I don't know if you probably didn't watch the SEC championship game, but of course we covered it. And all of a sudden, I'm in the chat and watching it, and I'm on a delay, and it says, "Oh no, fight!" And
yeah, I remember seeing that.
So
Yep.
I mean, we wrote stories off the fight and everything else that happened. It's just incredible that the audience for Dawn Staley in South Carolina right now, they're the biggest thing going in women's basketball. Of course, I had the pleasure of, until our region got chopped up, I was overseeing LSU coverage. And one day they fired the coach, and who they hired? Kim Mulkey. And that thing went crazy. And it was fun for 2 years to cover oversee the writer who covered Kim Mulkey in LSU. I didn't get to do it last year with the run to the national championship. And of course, this year, Angel Reese and everything. But there's great storylines. I mean, you got Iowa, LSU, South Carolina. It's kind of a testimony to what Pat Summitt has really did to get women's game. We've written stories of what she was willing to do. Like, she played UConn wherever, even if they were going to lose. But I wanted to play the best teams anywhere.
So later this year, Phil, you're going to mark 40 years in newspapers. Where does the industry stand at this point? And is there any way local journalism can flourish once again?
Yeah, I mean, look, I started in 1984. I remember 1984, and I wrote my stories on a typewriter, and then I would give it to someone, and they would type it, go to the typeset, and do it that way. It's just like everything else in the, we call it legacy media. So, the transition to digital has been huge. It's a different way that people want to get their information. Everything is, mobile and search. So the print is just still there. If you want to print newspaper, you can get it. In some cases, it's going to be mailed to you. The deadlines are terrible. And you have to wait, you got to wait 2 days to find the story or the score, but on that end, journalism is still strong because people want information. I work for Gannett, and I can tell you we've been hiring, we've been adding positions. We are a large group, so it helps in that we're in so many cities. But what's changed is just the delivering of the news. So it's not like we don't write game stories after the game's over. It's like we want to tell you what you need to know about a game. We write a lot of trending. We look at what people are talking about on social media. So it's capturing the audience and delivering something that they would be interested in. And then hopefully they'll be willing to pay for your work and subscribe and, fund this thing. It's been tough in a lot of cities, the small newspapers, that may have flourished 20 years ago. They're maybe down to like maybe one person in sports, if they're lucky, that covers high schools, and a few reporters. But it's just like different. It's like, I mean, I wasn't around when silent movies became talkies and when radio transitioned to television, but it's just that it's that same thing. It's just and like everyone's mad, like my newspaper's not what it was 10 years ago. Well, no kidding, it's not. And I'd be the first one to tell you that. I mean, I've worked till 1 a.m. sometimes to get out, and we would get out a newspaper at 1 a.m. It ain't gonna happen anymore. We were really lucky because we have a press in Knoxville, and I'm done it. I mean, they're done, we can't send anything usually until after 6:30 is our deadline. And when there's a live event, we can go to 8:30. But in some cities, they've already determined that we're mailing the papers, so they have like a 12 o'clock deadline. I will say, though, the other change is the Sunday newspaper. So starting in December, we no longer have what it would be considered a live sports section. We've started doing what we call like a magazine style. So it has a cover story, and it has a lot of QR codes to go to the website to find, the latest on Tennessee sports. It's all more a thought, kind of like the old Sunday paper was when you take out the game stories and things like that. So it's more of a different approach, because our newspaper on the Sunday sports section is done on Friday, and I have to have it planned out the week before. So we already have a cover story and we're working on it, and it'll be designed by Friday. And it does take a little pressure off someone like me that doesn't have to worry about what's going in print the next day, because it's already done.
I mean, hell, the New York Post and the Daily News are basically sometimes running stories from like writers out in different cities. Like they've let go of people, so it's pretty crazy how times have changed,
Right.
for newspapers like such as big papers like that.
Yeah, when I was young, my dad would bring home the Daily News, the Post, and of course we had our local newspaper. And I love reading the Post back then, the wall-to-wall coverage, there's the Yankees page, the Mets page, the Islanders page, the Knicks page, everything was in there, the columnists, and the same thing with the Daily News. It was just great. I mean, how could you not be a sports fan? And, you guys, if you're, because I lived I lived in Monticello. So growing up, we got WOR and WPIX, and we were close enough to get the Scranton TV station. So we got the Phillies, and WOR and WPIX, we got the, Knicks and Nets, Rangers, Islanders, Yankees, Mets. I mean, it was before really what cable was today. And we'd have a game on every night. It just would be incredible.
What experiences basically stand out to you the most in your time so far, throughout your career in the business?
Okay. Well, because now I'm more of an editor, for the last, 20 years. But when I was younger, I had some cool experiences. One of my favorite was went to Yankee Stadium, had my press pass, and walked out of go through the tunnels and everything. This is old Yankee Stadium. Walk out of through the tunnels, come out through the dugout, and there's Dave Winfield having a catch with Mattingly. I had to like hold myself, and I'm a fan, but I'm not a fan. I'm a reporter, But that was like awesome. I got to interview Steinbrenner after during the first game back from the '84 strike, I think it was. So that was pretty cool. He talked to me. I was like, I asked somebody, it was one of the guys that were in the press box. I said, hey, I'd like to talk to George Steinbrenner. And he goes, I'll see what I can do. And he comes over and he gave me 5 minutes. It was great. Going to college football games in the South was pretty cool. If you've never been to a game at the Swamp or in Alabama, and just the sheer, the electricity and the noise and the music. It's just, because I grew up, Monticello, we didn't have a football team. And so, I never experienced what a football game was like, let alone on this level. Neyland Stadium, which I used to go a lot before COVID, holds over 100,000. My first experience was as a reporter in Sullivan County at the Democrat, and I went to Honesdale, Pennsylvania, which was across the river, and they played Friday night football, and that was like amazing because the games I covered in Western Sullivan County was Saturday. They played Saturday because nobody had lights.
Mhm.
So it was like amazing. Like this is, and I never saw Friday Night Lights at that time or anything. I understood. And it was like, man, this is high school. I mean, it's like we didn't have those kind of things.
We have Syracuse University here, and I tell you, it's nothing like Neyland Stadium or Alabama or
Well,
any of those schools.
Well, as you guys know, so we went to Syracuse, and look, at the time, I think the basketball team had like the longest consecutive losing streak in the country, and they hired this guy who ended up late. He turned the program around and became a Division I coach at Siena, right? He took them to I think they beat Stanford in the NCAA tournament, and then he went to Texas. I can't think of his name, but he lived in our dorm, which was even crazier. He lived on the first floor.
I think the coach's name you're looking for is Mike Dean.
Mike Dean, you are correct, sir. Yes, he turned Oswego around and made a name for himself, and hatched, got some decent gigs.
So, in your role as a sports editor, what have been some of your biggest challenges?
Well, so when we combined with our region went from Knoxville, and then we added Nashville, or Nashville added us and Memphis and these other small papers. That was a challenge because I was no longer the boss. I had a boss. And so working with others and then told, okay, you're in charge of colleges. Like, all right, you got to not only worry about Tennessee, but I got to worry about Memphis. I got to worry about Vanderbilt. I got to worry about Austin Peay. I got to worry about MTSU. And we had reporters for all those teams, and trying to keep track and doing that. I had to learn a lot, managing people, because a lot of those people I would not see. It was just a phone call. And now that our region even then grew, and I was given oversight of Louisiana, and I was dealing with people that covered La Tech and ULM and Grambling and LSU and UL, and places I'll probably not go to. And then they were entrenched in their coverage and wanted to do it that way, and I had to basically tell them, no, we're not going to do it that way. And a lot of people left the business because it was not what they wanted to do. It was pretty sad, but we had to change if we were going to grow and survive. And that's probably the biggest thing, is just understanding and working with people. And secondly, the age change, where I was used to dealing with people closer to my age or older. Now everyone that is not everyone, but a good percentage are in their early 20s. I mean, we hire people right out of college. Just hired a new writer to cover South Carolina, only been out of college a year and a half. And the person will do a great job. But 5 years ago, maybe, but 10 years ago, no way. They'd be in Aiken, South Carolina, or Yazoo City, Mississippi, or somewhere. Everyone has to pay their dues. You don't have to pay your dues anymore if you're good. That's the biggest change.
That's true. And the same thing with radio, where you can't go to a small town and get your feet wet, because that station doesn't exist anymore. You have to really basically start at a higher level, and you have to be really good before you get that first job, right?
You know what bummed me out at the radio station, and for the time they were really high tech, and this is a small town, Monticello. It was automated. They had the tapes. There's no spinning records. It was just like, whatever, you're listening to your top 40 songs, whatever, here's some more. And then, even the commercials were all, they in a carousel, and they would play. All I did was the news at the local news after they did the top of the hour. We potted it up. I think it was CBS or NBC. I forget which one. I do my little 2 or 3 minutes. And then I just have to sit there and, you check the numbers or whatever you had to do. And yeah, that was fun.
Just keeping it on the air.
Yes.
No dead air.
Right.
No dead air.
Right. So Phil, you teach sports journalism at the University of Tennessee. You've done that for almost 10 years now. So what led you to pursue teaching sports journalism?
Yeah, they were looking for a lecturer because somebody had dropped out. And, I figured, hey, it can't be too hard. I just kind of teach what I do on a daily job, day for myself with my reporters.
Mhm.
I didn't realize about the grading part. That's been that's always, and I have to grade. I mean, it would be unfair to me just say, this story, no good. I really sit and read everything. I write notes and I try to give them a really good experience. But it's been great. And again, the same thing has happened. I get older, the students stay the same age and they make the same excuses. I get that email at 9:45 before 10 o'clock. I'm not feeling well today. I don't think I can make it to class. Like, okay, well, take your medicine. I hope you feel better. It's like, these things happen. I have a 21-year-old son and, he's in college and, but he doesn't make those he goes to class and things like that. But I do have a lot of students that will send me, what's the assignment again? Or they do the assignment and it's totally wrong. I said, this was supposed to be a game advance, not a game story. Oh, okay. Okay. Or like you were supposed to add quotes to this story. There's no quotes. Oh, okay. So, but
Yeah.
I do love it when I can get a student to get really excited about their work. And like, I'll give you just two quick examples. One student, first story that they sent me, I wrote things and I think I said, hey, did you see what I wrote? She goes, yes, it's pinned on my bulletin board in my dorm. I said, oh, that's okay. And then the second time was when we had to do deadline writing, and so I kind of threw a curveball, and we did. You're the reporter, and it's the Super Bowl. It's a halftime show. You have to write a story about Rihanna's performance. And after she got done, she stood up and said, "This is the best class ever." Because she got to write about music, and not about sports because there wasn't a sport. The only sports component was that it was the Super Bowl.
It was 3 years ago you were named part-time lecturer of the year at UT. So
Yeah.
you're doing something right, Phil.
Well, I think it's connecting. Like I read a lot of these notes from the students. It's kind of this is my swan song. I'm actually being replaced. Gene Wojciechowski, who up until last year was on game day, UT, and he's a Tennessee grad. They have hired him, and he's going to be teaching my classes in the fall. So that's fine. It's okay. But who would you rather take, the ESPN guy or the guy from Knoxville? So I mean, it makes a lot of sense on their end to attract students. But it's been, to get that award, and I'm more fulfilled. I've written a lot of letters for students to get a master's, to get admitted for graduate school. I've seen them get jobs in the field. That's more fulfilling on my end. If I can, I do this thing where I invite some of my former students back to class to talk about their experience, especially in the media. And when they say, if it wasn't for Phil Kaplan making me write this story or doing this or doing that, I wouldn't, he really helped me. And that's, when something like that happens, that makes it great.
We're going to do a petition to get Phil back.
No.
This is ridiculous. I mean,
well, so they told me I wasn't coming back in the spring, but apparently something happened, and then they said, "Please come back." And I said, "Sure, I'll do that." But no, it's fine. I think if they need me, like I said, I can tell you how many days I spend just trying to find time in my day every week to grade. It's not easy. Got to go to a coffee shop and just bury my head in a cup of coffee and start reading.
So do you want to continue teaching at all? Like, or is it something that you're actually kind of like, whatever, if it happens, it happens?
No, well, no, I'm closer to the retirement part of my journey. So no, look, if it was 20 years ago and I did have that opportunity, I probably would have went and got my master's degree and tried to be a teacher. So unfortunately, in a lot of these high-end universities, you have to have a master's degree. I just don't have the time to spend 2 years writing a thesis and doing all that on top of everything I do. I mean, I could do it, but I wouldn't be giving my job 100%, and that's more important.
I feel
But
like the experience itself should give you the master's degree. No, maybe
Agreed.
it's just
Well,
maybe it's
100%.
just me, but I don't know.
yeah,
Who am I
no,
to say that?
that's how they cut, you can become a professor of practice or something like that. And, yeah, look, I think it's, and if you look at a lot of the great sports journalism schools around the country, there are former sports writers that are teaching classes or running their departments, which is awesome. And I think that's the big thing that has changed with education is we can't, I don't use a textbook. I've never used a textbook because you can't. The world keeps on changing. What we say is social media today, in 6 months, will be different, right? I mean, TikTok might not be here. It might be Top Tick, or something else. It just, Twitter is now X. I mean, the
Yeah.
world keeps on changing the way we get information, but it's you just can't go by what you taught even the year before. You have to make nuances.
What is your advice to the students who wish to pursue a career in journalism?
I tell them if there's anything in media that they want to get, the best opportunity is when they're in school to take advantage of all the opportunities, whether it's a radio station or the TV station or the writing for the school newspaper. I mean, if you don't do that, it's going to be really tough because you get hands-on experience, you get to, use all this equipment. The one cool thing at Tennessee is that the SEC network uses students to basically manage all their equipment because they are not sending a full team for these SEC plus game, SEC network plus games or ESPN plus games that they have to stream. So yeah, I mean, if you want to work behind the scenes, if you want to be an announcer, you want to write, you want to be a sideline reporter, all these great opportunities. And then the other thing is, if you really are passionate and you want to, this is the job that you want, just like, years and years ago, I wanted to be in radio and I did whatever I could and I'd work for free if I could if that's what it meant, then do it. Because once you walk out of that door, I mean, it's really hard because you're competing not only against the college students that just graduated, college students that are still looking for the jobs, the laid off people that are looking for jobs, and then the people that haven't had a job, but they're still looking and they're doing freelance work. So there's so many jobs have disappeared, right? You guys mentioned that before. So it's less and less jobs. Thankfully, there's other platforms that have nothing to do with a newspaper, so you can still write, but even those jobs are dependent on funding because there's been a lot of stories about SI, Deadspin, even this place in Oklahoma that had just taken all these sports reporters. The guy said, I'm out of here and I'm taking my money and we're leaving, and they had to lay off like 6 writers.
Yeah, I just saw this earlier, not long before we started talking tonight about Sports Illustrated, and they're going to move into a new publisher. It was, we had talked about that recently, and then all of a sudden that came out, very timely to the podcast tonight.
Right. Yeah, it's the media world is very volatile. You just because you have a job doesn't mean you're going to have a job in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. Hopefully you have a backup plan and hopefully you have a good enough resume that you could land somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Resume is usually the biggest part.
Or you have connections. You've made connections
Yeah.
over your career.
So let's talk about let's go back to Oswego for a little bit here. How did you become interested in broadcasting, and what led you to attend Oswego?
Okay, so I'll try and give you the cliff notes. So I always wanted to be in broadcasting when I was like 12 years old, 13. I would have a tape recorder back then, carried around, and I would interview my parents or whoever, because I wanted to be like Marv Albert, that was the guy. And, I just was, loved sports, but I loved asking questions, and it actually helped me because I was kind of a shy kid anyway. Um, uh, so when I went to, instead of going to see a senior of high school, I went to community college, and part of it was getting to work at the radio station. And then I had to figure out where I'm going to go to college. And actually, my choices was going to be based on the furthest place I could get away from Monticello, New York. And that when I looked at the map and I saw Oswego, because I think my choices were Oswego, New Paltz, and maybe Brockport. And I go, Oswego's further. I'm going there. And I remember that was a long drive. My parents drove me up there, and of course, nobody went. I never went to the campus. I didn't think it was that important. I was just happy they accepted me. And they dropped me off. I didn't have a car, and I'm 18 years old. I'm living in the transfer dorm, and it was a tough first semester, just getting used to these big classrooms, making sure I was at class and paying attention. And it was a lot of distractions for when you're that age and you're away from home and have no friends. And it wasn't easy. But Oswego was great. I had great experiences there. Made a lot of great friends because of the way the dorms were set up, and coming back in the spring, and hopefully some of those people came back, and you stayed friends. And whatever it was there's just seems like tons of people from Long Island would go to Oswego, and every summer we would end up there. Everyone would just drive there and meet up, and we'd have a great time. And the Bridge Street Run, learned about that.
Yes,
Luckily, my birthday was never during a school year, because I would have hated that. Going to the hockey games, and we'd have our whatever flask, but it was like something I could hide under my jacket. That was part of it. I never realized that you could get 40 beers in a box for like $2.50 or whatever it was back then, from Utica, New York, or wherever they came from. But no, the clam bake we would have, the annual clam bake. That was cool. And the music, and there was a concert like every before graduation. And it was a blur because it was 3 quick years. And I do remember the day it snowed so bad, because class was never canceled, but there was one day that we must have had, because of the lake effect snow. Must have been so bad because the IGA ran out of beer. And where Onondaga was sit, there were like 2 trees. And if it was a windy day, I mean, a really windy day, we would watch people as they were trying to walk, and they would have to hold on to the trees just so they wouldn't fall down. It was amazing. It was that, because you're right. You didn't realize that it was right on Lake Ontario. Yeah. I remember going swimming, in the spring, of course, not in the winter. It was great.
When you look back, Phil, on your experience at Oswego and on your career in journalism, were there any experiences at Oswego that kind of set you on your career path?
Yeah, probably that I wasn't going to have a career in radio, which would probably, that was probably a good thing. I don't think there was one particular thing, but just having the opportunities kept me involved, and that was the most important thing. Because I could have drifted away and been like, what am I going to do? But I knew that it was going to be somewhere in media. And, fortunately, it was radio at the time. And radio actually was the thing that was the launch pad for my newspaper career. So I have to be thankful for that.
Phil, before we get you out of here, we have a traditional question we ask all of our Oswego grads. We want to know, back when you were in school there, the chicken patty sandwich is something that we had in the dining hall. Was that something back when you were in school that was a very popular item in the dining hall?
No, cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers.
I would eat like 3 cheeseburgers, every time, because it was unlimited. You could eat, as long as, you had your bill or whatever. No, that cheeseburgers was my thing. And then the ice cream. Those,
Of course.
but
Of course.
cheeseburgers for sure. I'm sure I gained a little weight because I was a scrawny kid. Probably came home, my parents didn't recognize me. Probably from other things too. But no, the dining hall was that was really great because I never ate. I think I made two breakfasts my 3 years because that wasn't that important.
Yeah.
But I made sure lunch and dinner I was always there because I had to get my food. Subs was something I was right in Oswego. You would
Mhm.
get the subs delivered to the dorms. That was amazing. Like, I'm so hungry and can I get that sub? I forget Oswego Sub Shop. Was that?
Swigo Sub Shop. Yeah. Did you have a go-to sub?
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but liverwurst.
Liverwurst.
Well, maybe because nobody else would want to eat it. I think maybe that was my reason, but liverwurst was, yes. I don't know why, but yeah, subs were great. I forget the name of the bar that was like a two-story bar that was maybe right next to it. My mind is,
Greens? Was it Greens?
no, I can't think of the name. Something Barn, maybe? I don't know.
Did you have Broadwells and Bucklands when you were there?
Bucklands. Okay, that was the place. Bucklands. Wasn't it like a two-story thing?
Yeah,
Like,
so actually that's funny. They closed down.
uh,
They were across the street from the Shed. It was like right when like in
yes, the
that no
shed, yes.
man's in that like no man's land area where there's like 8 different streets crossing each other in Oswego, right? Right there. It was they were right there, and they two of them both shut down the year, like literally at the end of spring '96. So like the semester right before Kevin and I got there, they shut down.
Yeah.
So, and like that's all I ever heard about like after we got there was like Broadwells and Bucklands. We used to all the like
Yeah,
freshmen used to go there and stuff like
right.
that.
Right. I will say music too. Pat Benatar. I had no idea who Pat Benatar was. I thought it was a guy. And she performed, and that was probably when she was just getting big.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of other concerts. I think Marshall Tucker Band played there and
Mm.
Boomtown Rats. What's his name? Oh, there was a guy who left Genesis, not the
Peter Gabriel.
not Peter Gabriel. It's like Steve Hackett.
Steve Hackett. Oh.
And he was on
Yes.
tour there. Those were pretty cool opportunities because we didn't have like a place where I live. They do now, but I could never see something like that unless I drove to Saratoga
Yeah.
or New York City, right? See
Right.
James Taylor at SPAC.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us. This was a blast.
Yeah.
And congratulations, really, on when you mark your 40 years in newspapers or legacy media later this year.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal accomplishment. And we really wish you all the best. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys, for inviting me, and good luck. I'll be listening.
And that was the South Region College sports editor of the USA Today Network, sports journalism teacher at the University of Tennessee, and of course, fellow Oswego alum, Phil Kaplan. What a great career he's had. 40 years in legacy media, a little bit in radio when he, during college and after college. So
I'm starting that petition. I'm starting up that petition for the
Yeah.
University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Just because he's not
crazy.
a professor. I mean, Gene Wojciechowski's not a professor.
Who's Gene Wojciechowski
Who's this
anyway?
guy?
Come on. Phil
Ah.
Kaplan, man. Can't bump him. Unbelievable. And by the way, when he was talking about Siena College and the basketball coach at Oswego, Mike Dean, and the reason that popped into my head is because Siena, of course, is right down the street from where I grew up in Latham, New York. And I remember that 1989 upset of Stanford was a big deal in Albany, huge deal. And Mike Dean, and who knew? We didn't even know that Mike Dean coached Oswego from 1980 to 1982. How about that? Phil Kaplan brought that to the show.
Never would have known that. Still, I don't even know who Mike Dean is. I'm not gonna lie, but that's a different story altogether.
it's okay.
But I didn't
Jay,
grow up.
me
I didn't grow
neither.
up in the Albany. I didn't grow up in the Albany area, so
He was
he's
an
a legend.
excellent-
He's a legend in the Albany area.
He's a legend at Siena College. He was an
Exactly.
excellent men's basketball coach. Yeah.
Hey, and he also mentioned, brought up the stuff that we never got to see when we were in Oswego, because we didn't get these types of acts, but like the great music that they would always come to Oswego back in the 80s and late 70s and 80s and stuff like that. Like we didn't ever get any like those types of acts. We got some okay ones, but nothing like, Springsteen or Kevin's Genesis people, or like
Kevin heard Genesis and it just perked right up.
Kevin was asleep. Kevin was asleep, and then all of a sudden he's like, "What? Genesis?" Huh?
I was not asleep. Although it is getting past my bedtime these days, but no, because I believe Peter Gabriel. So he left Genesis in '74, and I think it was around that time that he actually performed at Oswego solo. And then, as Phil mentioned, Steve Hackett, who's still touring, by the way.
Really?
He's still we saw him last year in Ithaca.
No kidding.
Phenomenal concert.
Really?
Listen, I honestly, great concert. Steve Hackett is a great musician, and he was doing the tapping on the guitar before Eddie Van Halen ever did. So, let's just
is it like the Guess Who's?
Yeah, the Guess Who's. That's right.
What a callback. That's excellent.
So many other great performances at Laker Hall or wherever it was. And then we're trying to remember who was there when we were there.
We didn't really have a lot of.
We didn't have that many.
Yeah,
we didn't have that many. We had Bush. Our senior year. They were there with Moby. Busta Rhymes was there. I don't know if anyone was there with Busta Rhymes. Someone had to have been there. I just don't remember.
There was a DJ that opened before.
Yeah, and then I mentioned. You got DJ Cool was there my freshman year. He just was playing in the ballroom in Hewitt Union, like just randomly. Like I hear music in the ballroom coming out of it. I'm like, what's this? And I was like, this is awesome. I was like, who knew?
One of the coolest concerts that I went to during my time at Oswego was not actually at Oswego. It was at SUNY Geneseo, where I got to see Everclear and Soul Coughing.
Oh,
what
I don't know
show!
Who is that?
Soul Coughing?
Now
you've never heard of Soul Coughing?
Soul Coughing was a WNYO mainstay when we were there.
Staple.
Don't know them.
So Chemical Brothers, Soul Coughing.
There you go.
I know Everclear. I know the Chemical Brothers.
Tori Amos. That was
Tori Amos. Yeah, of course. Man, Staple J. I'm very disappointed.
Space Hog,
man.
Space Hog.
Oh my God.
What
Space Hog. That's a pull right there.
That's a good one right there. That is excellent. Space Hog.
Wow.
Digital Underground had that one song. Remember Digital Underground? That's a rare one.
What's the name of that Space Hog song?
Yeah, the Humpty Dance, right? Digital Underground.
Humpty Dance.
The Space Hog. Space Hog had that one song.
Yes.
In the meantime, I think it was.
That's one of the. I don't know. Is that the name of the song? I know it's one of the lyrics.
Hold on.
We're gonna play Google right now. Well, I'll filibuster here while Kevin looks up the name of the song here.
I mean, we can go on Apple Music and figure that out.
We can't play any of that because that would cost us a fortune. We'd be bankrupt.
Don't you get like 10 seconds or something like that?
The band's best known single is In the Meantime.
It is In the Meantime. Okay.
So it is In the Meantime. Go me.
Good job, Kevin.
That's my Space Hog.
But in the meantime,
Crash Test Dummies.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to keep naming 90s bands. Let's do this. We can do a whole episode of this. I am all in.
We could. See, Brent made his offer. So now we have to.
I think we should. Let's bring him back next time we have a podcast episode and we just start talking 90s music.
Soundgarden,
Pearl Jam, Mudhoney, Nirvana.
I don't know Mudhoney.
Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains.
Social Distortion. Rancid.
I'm going to see Rancid. I'm going to see a concert at Citi Field. It's Green Day, Rancid. It's a pretty awesome concert. Hold on. Stand by.
Standing by.
A great lineup in the mid 90s.
Yeah. I know. I think it's a great.
I am all in on 90s music.
Spin Doctors.
Love the Spin. Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Oh,
yes. Ben Folds 5.
Oh man.
Beck.
Third Eye Blind.
Yes.
Seven Mary 3.
Oh, nice.
Silverchair.
Silver Goo Goo Dolls.
Oh,
Collective Soul.
Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, Rancid, and the Linda Lindas.
Whoa. Whoa. What a lineup.
Yeah.
I'd
Like
go
the
see
Smashing
Green Day.
Pumpkins are the opener for Green Day. I'm assuming it's going to be the Linda Lindas, then Rancid, then Smashing Pumpkins, and then Green Day playing.
Probably. That's probably the right order. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Phil was mentioning, working at like the station, and like hearing like the automated and hearing like top 40. And all I could think of in my head was like Casey Kasem or something like that.
That's right.
Playing in
Yeah.
the background. Casey Kasem.
and the American top 40. Hearing Kate, it was kind of over when you hear, and now at number 27, it's Coolio with Gangsta's Paradise. That just didn't coming from Casey Kasem,
No, that wasn't a Casey Kasem type of song. But he said, reach for the stars.
Right. Yes. Keep
forget
your
the rest
feet
of it
on the
was.
ground.
There you go.
Or
Yeah, keep your feet on the ground and reach for the stars.
Now it's time for another long distance dedication.
Kevin, I want you to continue working on this limited fake Casey Kasem. It is excellent. We should do an entire podcast like that.
Casey Kasem.
The voice of Shaggy, right? On Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are we breaking news there? Can we break it? Is that breaking news?
No, that's not breaking news.
I don't think I didn't know that. I didn't know that was Casey Kasem.
Yeah. No, that's
Really?
not that's well known.
Not to Chris.
It wasn't. Oh my god.
I mean, hey, I didn't know whoever
just blew my
was,
mind there. And we need to put a disclaimer on this episode about the Scooby-Doo bit. Wow.
See, you never know. I'm sure the three of us have all kinds of stuff rolling around in our heads that.
Oh, I have so much useless knowledge in my head.
It's all the time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when growing up, like reading newspapers, I would read like articles by like Greg Cody and Dan Lebitard, Miami Herald, and Mitch Albom out of Detroit Free Press, and that. Did you guys have favorite authors that you read, like newspaper authors, newspaper columnists?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I just liked. I mean, I liked Mike Lupica, obviously. I mean, growing up in New York, growing up down in New York City, and you get the Daily News, and Mike Lupica's one of the, obviously the top writers of all time. But I didn't really read other newspapers. Like I just read like the Daily News, and that was a Staten Island Advance, but that doesn't count.
When I went to high school, I was the morning on my way into high school, because we would take the train in back then. And I would go to the deli on the corner, grab a news and a Post.
Yeah.
Bring them to school.
75 cents worth of newspaper.
That's right. Daily News was 50 cents. The Post was a quarter for a while on Staten Island, because they were trying to bring in Staten Island readership. So I do that. And then when I worked at WFAN or MLB radio, I would News and a Post and read them on the way in, the train to the ferry to the subway, 2 hours, one way. So I had plenty of time, but my guys were like Jay mentioned, Mike Lupica and Bob Raceman, who covered media. There was Bill Madden, great Daily News baseball columnist.
Great baseball, yeah.
Bob Clappish, Bill Gallo, who did the cartoons, I think for the Daily News. Those were iconic cartoons, So there was just so many. John Harper, I think, who still is with
he's around.
He's around.
I don't know if he's still writing, but he works for SNY a lot now.
SNY.
Yeah, he does a lot of SNY work now.
I mean, Steve Serby with the Post.
Well, Clappish ended up leaving and going to the Bergen Record.
Right.
At one point.
All right. We're going to see you again in a couple of weeks. So the guest is but a mystery.
It is a mystery.
A TBD guest. But you'll love it.
It'll be a nice surprise.
You're going to love it, I'm sure.
That's right.
Blog is coming up in this coming Monday. So please check it out. I don't know. Is it Chris? I think it's Chris.
I think it's Chris is up.
Chris, I'll come up with something.
Okay. We have faith in you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Check us out online, please. Throwingbagels.com. Email throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. And that's it. So, Chris, Jason,
Kevin.
Sayonara,
been a pleasure.
as
Adios.
always.
Bye.